Dear Father in heaven, we come before you to give you thanks and praise. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to come together in fellowship as a group. We pray, Lord, that we are in unity, mind, body, heart, actions, and thoughts with you, that we can be in unity with you, each separately and each all together as a unit, that we can all be in unity with each other. We pray that your Spirit will be upon us. Fill us all with your Holy Spirit, that you will be present in this time of fellowship, that you will bring your thoughts and help us to open our hearts and our minds to understand your word, to understand what you need us to know before we need to know it, before we need to teach it. Help us to learn all these truths that you want us to know. We pray, Lord, that you'll be here and present and share with us and give us insight into your word and your truths. We pray, Lord, that we will all be accounted worthy to stand before you at your second coming. We pray that we'll all be in unity with each other, with a good spirit, positive, loving, and kind. We ask, Lord, for your strength, your wisdom. Help us to remain humble and help us to keep our garments clean. We pray all this in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and the precious name of our Lord and Savior. Yeah. Amen.
Amen. You know, if you wanted to spend a little bit of time just kind of quickly review, maybe not quickly, reviewing.
Right. Yeah, not quickly. Okay, so let me get that document. And
that might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, because let's see, Tony, you weren't here the other day, right? Monday. Maybe you didn't hear the whole
thing. Yeah, I wasn't here for the whole thing.
Okay, so yeah, let's do a quick, like a small review. And so we left off here. Okay, you can't see what I'm seeing.
Not pretty sure.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, until I share. Okay, so we left off here at the New World Order. This is the graph of the two Gorbachev's model and Bush's model. But we're going to go back and let's do a bit of a review. Now, is this, this probably isn't big enough. Let me make it bigger. Okay, if it needs to be bigger than that for anybody, please say something.
I'm good.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit and we'll do a bit of a review. Okay, so you can remember that Susan was doing the presentation on, it was Acts, okay, why is my cursor not working? Acts 27, verses 1 through 5, and in her presentation, Tess was talking, she went from Caesarea, Sidon, Cyprus, and then it ended right there at Myra. And we started, this is where Tess's presentation started in part 4, labeled the One World Order, and she went over the meaning of Myra and Lycia. Myra meaning bitterness, Lycia meaning harvest, and she lined it up also with Pyrrhus's line, which is not on this board, but at that same way mark of Sunday law. And right here, like Myra and Lycia is also where Pyrrhus is in Argos at the Sunday law, and Argos means harvest. So this all lines up. And also, let's see, okay, so, and then, so that was the end of that presentation. And then we start, she wants to talk about the overturning. And so she's going to get into, she wants to get into the external portion of this same line. So on what she was talking about here, it went from Caesarea from Caesarea to Myra, but she's just doing this from Cyprus to Myra. Okay, and then from Cyprus to Myra, she's going over this overturning. And from Cyprus to Myra, you go through the Sea of Sicilia and Pamphylia. Am I saying that right? Pamphylia? And the Sea of Sicilia means to overturn. And Pamphylia means a nation made up of every tribe. And with these, she wants to show how there's this overturning of the United States. Well, the United States, we come to understand in this movement that the United States is the the sixth kingdom. Sorry, the sixth kingdom. Okay, and in this history, the sixth is going down. Wait, no, this is sixth kingdom. Going down? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Because in 1989, you have the King of the South. The King of the South goes down because this is where Russia gets the deadly wound. Okay, for some reason it's not making sense in my head right now. So the United States is more powerful in the history of the Sixth Kingdom, and then but it actually is more powerful in the history of the Seventh Kingdom, and we talked about why. And the reason why is because in the Sixth Kingdom there is two superpowers, and in the seventh, there are two superpowers, and so the King of the South and Islam are able to stop the United States from becoming just one superpower and taking over the world. Because otherwise, in 1991, they could have been the seventh kingdom. But because the King of the South and Islam came back in that history, they stopped them. And so it's in the Seventh Kingdom where supposedly we're going to end up with just one superpower again. I don't think that's making sense in my head right now, because it made sense the other night, and now the way I'm saying it, it's not.
Is it confusing because you have 1989 and 1991 down on the bottom?
I think so.
Is that I listened to all of those presentations and watched, a good portion, but don't see all the boards.
Uh-huh.
Did she put it that way so that Panium and 1989 were lined up?
Yeah, but for some reason it's not making sense right there, and that's exactly why. But so let's go to this other one, and maybe it'll all come back in one of the other the other graphs. So in this part right here, President Trump was making the speech, and he was comparing the United States' rise in power from 1989 to 1991 with the invention of the World Wide Web. So in 1989, the World Wide Web was invented. In 1990, it was created, and then in 1991, it was released. And during the same time, this is where the United States was basically just one superpower, because at 1989, you had the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it was a progressive fall for the King of the South. In 1991 is when Gorbachev resigned, and then so that was the end of the USSR. And then until there was the strike with Islam in 2001, right? Then we kind of, I don't know, we're doing more than we should have been doing. Let's see. Okay, and then so let's get back to the New World Order. In 1988, Gorbachev saw the fall of the USSR coming. He knew it was coming. And to kind of help stop the United States being a bully against the USSR and Russia and all those places, he came up with this model of the New World Order that would help stop the United States from becoming a bully. Because with the UN, so the United Nations, if everybody was in this circle together, everybody would have the same amount of power, the same amount of, not just power, but vote, everybody would have a say, an equal say. And so everybody would be inside that. The USSR, whoever was left of the USSR, which would be Russia, USA, France, Germany, China, Canada, it's everybody, according to Wikipedia, it's all 193 sovereign nations is in that UN. And so that would be protection, because if everybody has a say, you can't just have one country going off and, being a bully and telling everybody what to do. But his idea of a one union, the United Nations, made George Bush and Ronald Reagan really nervous. And Bush redefined his idea of what that would be. And so let me go ahead and reread this part. Or does anybody else want to read? Because I read a whole lot last time, and I realized that I should have asked for help. And does anybody feel like reading?
I'll read.
Okay, so start there with George Bush and Ronald Reagan.
Okay. George Bush and Ronald Reagan did not like this. So what they decided was they were going to take this phrase and rework it. They were going to use his same phrase and redefine it. And this is a speech that George Bush makes on September 11th, 1990. He does this intelligently. It is documented intentionally. There is a global crisis, a Middle East crisis, and I just want to read some excerpts from his September 11th, 1990 speech before Congress. He said, "I've just returned from a very productive meeting with the Soviet President Gorbachev, and I am pleased that we are working together to build a new relationship." He's talking here about Iraq and Kuwait. This is the Gulf War. He said clearly, no longer can a dictator count on East-West confrontation to stymie concerted United Nations actions against aggression. He is saying for the last years in this history, nations have been able to be aggressive, and they can get away with it because of the conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States. They have been able to hide in a sense, and it is the exact same thing happening now. Syria can hide in a sense because of the conflict, the proxy war between Russia and the United States. George Bush is saying that it can no longer happen. No longer can dictators hide behind East-West confrontation. He continues, a new partnership of nations has begun. We stand today at a unique and extraordinary moment. The crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. A new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. He is kind of talking like this. There is going to be a United Nations. Everything that is held back, that is working properly with the Cold War, is coming to an end, because the Cold War is coming to an end. We are about to enter into a new world order. So he has taken Gorbachev's phrase and he's redefining it. He said, today, that new world is struggling to be born. He continues, the test we face is great, and so are the stakes. This is the first assault on the new world that we seek, the first test of our mettle. And I just want to mention this history in 1989 to 1991. In 1989, there begins to be tension between Iraq and Kuwait. In 1990, Iraq invades Kuwait. In 1991, the United States invades Iraq. This is just repeated in 2003. There are two Iraq wars, two George Bushes. Continue, or you want somebody else to read?
I had to find the mute button.
You're what?
I just had to find the mute button. So does anybody have any questions on that so far? Is it making sense?
He wanted it to be, I know she's using certain words, unilateral, is that what it was? He wanted it to be a United Nations that the United States is the one that's in charge of it and overseeing, with everybody else part of the United States, but us being the power over it, correct?
Yes, exactly. So
Gorbachev wanted everyone in the circle together.
Exactly. So it's like this. So the UN would be made up of the UN and everybody would be in it. But where Bush's model is, everybody in the UN would be in it, except the USA would they would be the leadership. They would be, they would direct.
So interesting. For years, I remember people, long before I ever picked up a Bible, people would be talking about the United States being a bully. I had no idea what was going on. So I didn't know what they meant when they'd said that. But with all that we have learned, I mean, I have no doubt in my mind what that meant now. But for the longest time, I didn't know what it was. I was not a war person and not a history person. And I just didn't, for many years, I didn't pay attention to any of this stuff.
The same here. Yeah, it's so weird how many of us in this movement have said, I didn't do good in school, I didn't do good in grammar, I didn't do good in history or politics, I didn't pay attention, and now we're having to look at it, and it's like, wow, it just puts a whole different spin on what's going on behind the scenes.
It's better that we're learning it this way anyways than the way they probably taught it in the schools.
I agree. So Angela says the WikiLeaks files reveal all the aggression and atrocities the U.S. committed during the Gulf Wars. The Bushes and the entourage are and were horrid hypocrites. Sorry for all the typos, no worries. So yeah, thank you for that extra information. It's just amazing to go out there. I started looking at the history, and it's like, wow. And this term, the New World Order, it's not new. Actually, Gorbachev didn't make it up either. She was saying that it started with Gorbachev, and this model did. But the term, the New World Order, they were using it back. It was. Churchill and Roosevelt were using this term also, the New World Order. But their idea of the New World Order was this change, where everybody's kind of getting along with this new world where we just have these new rules where we're going to have to get along better. It was a different thought process. It was, and they were I don't know if they created the League of Nations, but it happened around their time, so it must have. And so they did get together something like the United Nations. It was called the League of Nations, but it failed. And I didn't research all the history on that, but like I said, this New World Order didn't come out around Gorbachev. It started even before that. So, okay, and let's see. So she uses the term despotic. So she says what they do in that war, referring to Bush and the Iraqi war. She said it was it was despotic, to put it mildly. And I think we've defined the word despotic before, but just in case, it means absolute in power, independent of control from men, constitution, or laws, arbitrary in the exercise of power, and despotic as a despotic prince. And they had this idea that they could just do whatever. And let's see, to go on, and it's unlimited and unrestrained by the Constitution, laws, or men, absolute, arbitrary, as despotic authority or power, tyrannical. Who else do we know that we've kind of defined as tyrannical? Starts with a T.
Oh, yeah.
Trump.
Yeah.
He's gonna trump them all, huh?
Yeah, exactly. When I think of tyrannical, I think of, like a little 2-year-old. They're going to have their little tyrant, their little tantrums, tyrannical. I don't know.
It amazes me how many.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
It amazes me how many, all the accusations he makes on people for the very things that you see him openly do.
Yeah. Did you know that they're actually counting all the lies that he says?
Yeah, I've seen things like that, yeah.
What are they up to now?
I don't know. I've just seen it every now and then pop up in some report or newscast or something.
Something like 10,537. They're actually counting all the lies he says. 10,537.
Who was it? There's somebody famous that coined that phrase that if you tell a lie enough times, it becomes people's truth, that they believe the lie over the truth if you just keep telling it.
Often enough. If you tell a lie often enough.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe it was the Pope.
It might have been Goering. It might have been Goering, but I'm not sure.
I think it's Abraham Lincoln.
Could be.
What did you say, Lana?
I think it's Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, maybe. Huh.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's see. Going back to what was going on in the war, I'm pretty sure we didn't read this part. Does anybody want to start reading from here? They actually said.
I'll read for you.
Sure. They actually said,
Okay, go ahead.
They actually said, they warned Saddam Hussein, we are going to take your country back to the pre-industrial age. It is a fully industrial country, and they intentionally went in and they brought it down to after the Gulf War. It was only able to come back to 4% of the power output that it had before as far as the electricity system. The electricity that was behind all of their innovation and their hospitals and their schools and everything. They decimated the country. George Bush and his government say in this history, we are making no distinction between the government and what they did and the Iraqi people. We are going to punish both, and we're going to destroy that country to the point where they will be so dependent on foreign aid, they will not question anything the United States does after that. They wanted to bring Iraq completely under their control, and to do that, they needed it dependent on foreign aid. So they intentionally destroyed their infrastructure beyond anything that was necessary. People say Saddam Hussein was a dictator. He did war crimes. So did Kuwait. They had mass graves in this history. This is not about war crimes and democracy. That is what the New World Order looks like. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
George Bush Sr.'s son, George Bush Jr., in 2003, wants to invade Iraq. And what is his problem? Who stood in his way? George Bush Sr. invades Iraq in 1991. George Bush Jr. wants to invade it in 2003. Russia stands in the way, and there are two others, Germany and France. Germany, France, and Russia. They, in 2003, said under international law, you are not allowed to invade Iraq. And what did George Bush Jr. say? We don't need UN approval. Why? because he has the same concept as his father, and for him the United Nations was just in rebellion. They invaded Iraq against international law because for him, this is what the New World Order was meant to look like. He invaded illegally while he was opposed by Russia, Germany, and France. Keep going, or you want to switch up readers?
You can keep going if you want. Does anybody have any questions? I saw that Lana answered that question about
Oh, Joseph Goebbels. I'm just looking at it right now. He was the guy that worked for Hitler. He was the propaganda guy that worked for Hitler that kind of really did a lot of propaganda. That's the best I can say without opening up Wikipedia or something. But, oh, that makes sense.
Goebbels?
Joseph Goebbels. Yeah, I think that's how you say it.
He says he was the Nazi mastermind fellow of Hitler, and he said, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and or military consequence of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. Ouch.
Wow, huh?
Yeah.
A little foretaste of what's coming.
Right? Oh, wow. Trump again. Right?
Yeah. So, are we here?
We're at the top where it says Father and Son.
Okay.
This is a big paragraph, so I didn't break this one up very good.
Okay. Father and Son had the same concept of the role of the UN, and it is George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. that give us an insight into what the Seventh Kingdom looks like. The Seventh Kingdom, seventh head, does not look like Gorbachev's idea. This is where we have taken all the conspiracy theories, and what do you find behind Trump supporters now? They're so afraid of this Gorbachev's model of the UN. The supporters behind Trump, even those within his government, say there is a secret UN agenda to control the world, which is why the United States needs to take back control of the UN. They speak out against this model, Gorbachev's model, those supporting Trump, those that led to his election. They're terrified of the United Nations in this concept of the New World Order. This UN is not bad. This is safety. This is a safety net. The European Union is a safety net. But this is where our conspiracy theories come from. There is no secret United Nations agenda. This is what the UN looks like. Mexico, China, Israel, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, Russia, USA, UK, all at the same level. They do not have a secret agenda to control the world. They cannot even control each other. Some of them cannot even stand in the same room with each other. They're not putting out left-wing news. Saudi Arabia would not like what comes out of CNN. Russia certainly doesn't like it. The Palestinians don't like it. The Israelis don't like it. The Chinese do not like it. They're not putting out left-wing news. If anything, they like the right wing, but they do not have a news stream that they are putting out. We have so many conspiracy theories tied to the role of the United Nations. It's not something to be feared. It is something that was designed to protect us. And what we see from 1989 to 1991, or from Panium to the Sunday Law, or from the sixth head to the seventh head, is not Gorbachev's idea. It is the concept of George Bush. It is the United States as a dictatorship over the United Nations. When the United States wants a Sunday law, whatever that looks like, China will implement it. Saudi Arabia, Palestine, Russia, all these countries that hate them will implement it because you are fighting the only global superpower. There is no longer anyone else to hide behind, so you are forced. Some will follow just like internally. Some obey in the head, some obey in the hand. You want to look at what is happening with Brazil. Some of these countries have populist right-wing leaderships coming up. They will obey willingly their governments. Other governments are not following. If you still have a liberal government in Canada, they might be forced by the hand, whether that is economic or in a different way, where they just do not have a choice. We need to understand the concept of what the seventh head looks like. The difference between Gorbachev's model and George Bush's model. The majority of all the conspiracy theories we have about the United Nations comes from this model, comes from Gorbachev's model, and it is a good model.
Thank you. Thanks for reading. So Angela says, the permanent members of the UN Security Council have far more power than the other members, and thus we had many goals of others shot down by them. They veto what others want. Example, the long refusal to allow Palestinians to be recognized. That's, the UN is part of history that I don't completely know. So the fact that I know what it says, that there's 193 sovereign nations in it, I just learned the other day. And if I only knew what I watched in her presentation, then I would have thought just these few countries were actually in the UN. So it's something that I need to study. I don't know enough about what the UN does and how much control or power they actually do have. Let's see. How did I ended up extra page in here? I don't know. Okay. So here she has, oops, someone asked a question, and it says okay. Someone asked a question in the audience in Canada, and the question is, what about the religious side of the UN, the kind of occult side? And she says, how I see it is, they have this circle, and in this circle they have Hinduism and they have Islam. This is kind of what they have got beneath. So right in here, and then they have Buddhism and all these different things, and they kind of come together. What is wrong? What is wrong about this? This is a good thing. This is what we want under the Constitution. And so you can see it's just like the UN, where everybody falls under this: Hinduism, Protestantism, Islam, Seventh-day Adventism, Buddhism. You know, everybody falls in this one UN, United Nations circle. It's the same as Gorbachev's model, right? It says, but what does the United States want? You can be, so the United States wants this it's a word I can't say, Protestantism, Bush's model. You can have Hindu, you can be Hindu, Islam, Buddhist, Seventh-day Adventist, as long as you're under Protestantism. This is what it looks like in the United States. This is what they're trying to bring about. As long as you fit this model, as long as you come under Protestant control, you can do what you want, but you need to follow our beliefs, our morality. You have to look like us, dress like us, practice like us, speak our language, and as long as you can do that, then sure, you can come under our leadership. This is part of the UN. Morally, okay, so and another thought back into the regular UN, this is part of the UN where everybody gets along, everybody comes together, but morally, we do not actually agree with any of these other religions, but for protection, it is good because then we can put in the circle of Seventh-day Adventism in that safety net. This is freedom of religion. Everyone gets their own piece of the pie. If you want to practice Hinduism, you have freedom. If you want to practice Sabbath keeping, you have freedom. It is when we come into this model, Bush's model, where you lose all your freedom. In this model, Gorbachev's countries might not be able to do everything they want, like invade Iraq, but it is safety. In this model, the Bush's, the Protestants' model, is not safe. Like Rome, as long as you think like us, you can be whoever you are. This message has become quite political as they try to take over the government. Let's see. So does anybody have any question on that, that side of it, the religious side of that?
Can I say something?
Yes, please. Uh-huh.
It's so interesting because when I was in college and, you know, I took a lot of like cultural classes and different things like that. And to see it from the other side of someone coming into America, they can see all of this. They can see the ethnocentrism, you know, they can see like where they have to assimilate to the Western culture, you know, and submit, you know, to, and I should say, and yield, you know, to their own, sorry, not yield, but give up their own practices in order to be under, you know, considered American. You know, they have to, it's just so interesting. And at the time I could understand, but I also couldn't understand because there were things, you know, beliefs that I had, but now, you know, I kind of like have a better understanding of how with Bush's model, you know, that was present. And I couldn't see it as clearly probably as someone who was coming here from a different country, you know. So it's really interesting. But I know that a lot of other people could have, who studied these things, like, you know, some of my professors, they were, you know, seeing some of these things. But, you know, yeah, it's just really interesting that I see that the two models there. I don't know.
It's kind of like what Saul, where it feels like the scales are falling off the eyes, because I never noticed this before either. Like, you know, well, you have to know our language, you have to dress like us, you have to talk like us, and then sure, you can come into our country, but it's sad, you know, and I never noticed it before, and I thought that way, you know, well, yeah, well, if they're going to come over here, why not learn this language, you know, and I never realized how Bush model it was. It's sad, and I praise God for calling us out of darkness and helping us to see our mistakes and our thought process, and helping us to see that, you know, we need to change the way we think.
Yeah, amen.
Anybody else have any comments?
I was just wondering who studied this to come up to know that that was Bush's model. You know what I mean? How they knew that he wanted Protestantism to be the head over, how they came to that understanding. That's all. I just wonder how they, you know what I mean?
I do have to point out one thing. Okay, when let me show you real quickly. Her finished board work. She did not have, I'm talking about Tess, she did not have this up there, but it was implied, and so I put that up there because her words were implying it. So I just have to, just to clarify, just to make sure that, because hopefully I wasn't overstepping, because you see her model. Can you all see the board right here? I'm not sure if it's big enough, but oh yeah, she did.
Yeah, she does. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, my bad. So
no, you did good. Okay. I wasn't questioning your work, Christine. I was just kind of wondering how they know that, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. God has been like opening up our eyes, and he must have totally opened up Sister Tessa's or whomever she was studying, because you can tell when you go back to study these videos and come up with these notes, you can see how much she's been studying, you know, so she's put a lot of work into these presentations she's been doing.
Yep,
Pretty amazing.
I agree.
And God has really been leading her.
I also think they have a good understanding of parables, like a really good understanding of parables.
Yeah, I agree.
No.
So let's see. Angela says oh wait, I must have read that one already. Did I read that already? Permanent members of the UN Security Council have, yeah, I read that one already. Okay, cool. So any more questions? Okay. Does anybody else want to read?
Wait, I do have one kind of question. It's like, did you, when you took those pictures, did you just screenshot them or like take your phone camera? How did you get those pictures like that? The ones of Tess in there.
The one like at the bottom of the one that I just scrolled all the way down to the bottom to get that?
Yeah, or like the one at the beginning.
Okay, that one, let's see, it's called, do you have what kind of computer? Do you have a PC with like Windows 10?
There's a screen tool. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, it's called Snipping Tool.
Yeah, snip it.
Victoria, do you have a Windows 10 computer?
She will.
Yeah, right now I have a Google Chrome book, so I don't have like all those tool softwares, probably somehow, but yeah. You
could do a search on your thing. It comes with a lot of the different, if it's a PC, I don't know what Mac's equivalent to is, but for any type of Windows PC product, they have what's called a snipping tool.
Yeah, I do have a PC, but it's kind of like, it's a little bit different than the average Microsoft, or the Windows, because it's strictly like a Google, like Chrome, and stuff like that. But anyways, okay, I'll check into that because that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then one other thing I noticed when you, in your paragraphs where you have the link, and it was saying like Bush's speech, and it was like blue highlighted. And I think that if I were to click that on my own, it would take me to his speech. Is that right?
It's supposed to. Does it do that?
Okay. And yeah, how did you do that?
Do you have this is a Word document, and so I just did like an insert link. So so what you do is you highlight the word where you want the link. So say this, I'm gonna send this, if you click on this word overturning, it's gonna send you to a Wikipedia to the definition called for overturning. And so I highlight that word overturning, and I go insert link, and then I type in, or I paste in the URL right here in the address and hit OK. Then that word right there will be the link.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's it's all a learning process. We're all part of teaching, is teaching each other how to teach, and the different tips, right?
Sister
Yeah.
Victoria, I just checked. Google Docs has that too under tools. You can insert link.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Does Google Tools have a snipping tool or something to capture pictures?
What do you mean capture pictures? I just drag and drop them into the...
To do a screenshot when you need to get a screenshot.
Like if you wanted to get a screenshot of one of Tessa's board work.
I mean, it's just a picture. You can just insert image once you save it.
Yeah, but some images you can't save. It's when you want to get a screenshot. You can't, like when you're watching a video, you want to get a screenshot of it. I don't think Google Docs has that.
Okay.
But I always just went to the Paint software that comes free with pretty much every computer, and you just paste it in there and save. You paste it in there, and you save it as an image, and then you can put that image wherever you want.
Yeah, but how did you capture it?
Screenshot.
Okay, that's what she's asking. Yeah, I think that's what you're asking.
most computers do have a key, a button, a key on their keyboard that says print screen.
Yeah.
And when I click on that button, print screen, and then I go and open up a image capturing or some sort of image software, and I do a file new, and then I do a Control V for paste, it will paste it. So if you want those directions, Victoria, later, I'll go over it again, and if that would help.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
It would help me too, Christine.
Okay. Okay. Remind me.
Okay.
You can share it at the end of this Bible study. If the two people hang out, you can share it. So.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So now we're going to go, she wants to go back to talking about Cilicia and Pamphylia. So when we look at the Sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we see the overturning, and this is a nation made up of every tribe. What is coming up is the UN, but what that looks like is Bush's model of the UN with the US in control. Because at the Sunday law, the United States is more powerful than it was before. It is more powerful because the other world's superpower has fallen. That was in 1991, so it's gone. And we have already seen that in our reform line of from 1989 to 1991, but God was really good to us, and they still had two restraints that were going to make sure that this did not progress too quickly. So we find Islam and the King of the South both come into history, and they start to hold back the United States from fulfilling its purpose. We have described what the UN looks like. These conspiracy theories of Walter Veith, they are really conspiracy theories that you also find within Trump's White House, within his own administration, also within his supporters. So this was also written about, this was also written about in the New York Times in that history. It is an interesting statement. It says, a pivotal point came with Bush's September 11th, 2019 speech toward a new world order. It's a commitment to U.S. strength. The Gulf crisis was seen as a reminder that the U.S. must continue to lead and that military strength does matter, but that the resulting new world order should make military force less important in the future. A very few postulated a bipolar new world or a new order of U.S. power and the United Nations moral authority. The first is global policeman. The second is global judge and jury. The speech was indeed pivotal, but the meaning was hidden. The main point is the following. It had been assumed that the old bipolar to power world order beget a multipolar world. The immediate post-war Cold War world is not multipolar, it is unipolar. It had been assumed that you would go from two to many under the United Nations, but you could immediately see after the end of the Cold War, it did not go from two to many. It went from two to one. And that is what we see from Panium to Sunday Law. We already have a history, an example of what the seventh head looks like. And underlining theme in all the discussion is that the United States has now acquired a preeminent position in the international hierarchy. The situation has developed because of the precipitate decline of the Soviet Union. Bush himself has indicated that it is the new relationship with Moscow that creates the possibility for this new order. For many analysts, therefore, the new world's essential feature is not the values it is said to embody, nor the principles upon which it is to be based, but that it has the United States at its center. So it was quite spoken of in that history, but this is what George Bush was bringing about. So when we see these crises, we can see it in the Gulf War, but it is not a coincidence that you have 2 George Bushes and 2 Iraqi wars. Let's see. Does anybody else want to read?
I just wanted to make a comment there that was on or is on your currency in the U.S. Out of many, one.
Yes.
The U.S. now wants to be the head of everything and everybody. And New World Order is on the currency too, except it's in Latin. So this was envisioned many years ago, centuries ago.
I read that I just read that today, and it was that's funny that you mentioned it. Somebody I read that it was not the New World Order. Did I just lose screen?
Yeah.
Am I still sharing?
Yeah.
I'm still sharing, am I? Okay, what happened? Okay, sorry.
The wonders of technology never cease to amaze me.
Right, me too. Okay.
You know, while you're looking for that, Christine, if I may make a comment to what Angela just brought up, would that be all right, or is it not a good time yet?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I thought, you know, Angela, I wanted to mention that, but I was afraid to because of conspiracy theories.
No conspiracy, it's right out in the open.
I know, but it goes back to like Masons and the Masonry and the founding of America, because George Washington was the first president and da 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 da. And so then I thought, gosh, if I say that, then it's gonna sound like some conspiracy or some. So what I'm trying to say, Angela, I'm not picking fault with you. What I'm trying to say is I'm having a struggle trying to separate out what is truth from these overlaid stories that have come in the truth so that when we bring something up, someone won't say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. What I do is I try to get to the source, and I try to look at all of the sources I can get hold of. And if I see a conspiracy theory that happens to have fact in it, the facts are right in your face, like blatant out of many. One.
Yes, Ordo Seclorum or something like that.
Yeah, Novus Ordo Seclorum.
Yeah.
And as a former Catholic, I took plenty of Latin, and I wish I could remember it all because it sure would come in handy sometimes.
So I was just reading all of that today on this one website, and it was talking about conspiracy theories, and supposedly those words that are translated, it's actually says the new order of the ages.
Yeah. Well, age and world are the same thing in Latin, as I learned it anyway. Seclorum. Like there was a hymn we used to sing, something about to all the end of the ages, and it was the same word, seclorum, or similar.
So they were saying that it alludes to the beginning of an era where the United States of America is an independent nation state, because this was like this was the beginning of, their infancy. I mean, there's no way they could be thinking about taking over the world when they just barely got over here and were trying to, settle the United States. So I'm wondering about it, as it does seem like it could be.
Well,
It
is Masonry. If you look at the symbol, you can see the pyramid, and then you can see the eye on the top, and that's the eye of Horus. But you'll see that in a lot of the Egyptian hieroglyphic, if you go back and look, and it kind of goes back into that false worship, Yeah. But yeah. I hope I didn't cut you off. I hope I didn't cut you off, Christine.
Look at the base of the pyramid too, 1776, and then like as you go near closer and closer to the end, it narrows. They had a vision way back then.
Can
I mean, I'm looking at this thing. I know what you're talking
Can
about.
I say something real quick?
Yeah, this is going back to, we're having it backwards. Go ahead, Adrian.
So if you watch the Tyler presentations, he goes over the Declaration of Independence, and he goes over how when they made this country and they decided to split from England, what the United States did, they did something that no other country had ever even thought of doing. And what they wrote in the Declaration, saying that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that the government gets its power from the people. No one had any idea of that. No one ever believed that. They always believed that the monarchs were chosen by God and we all get our power from the monarchs and all of this. So they literally turned politics and this belief system upside down and on its side. So I think it's alluding to what they did at that time, saying this is a new world idea. This is like nothing else. This country. It's like if you were to think in your mind, if I had my own island, I would do it right. And I would make this happen and people would be free and everything would be perfect. Literally, that's what the founders of this country were thinking when this happened, this country happened. They were like, all right, if we're going to split from the UK, we're going to do this right. Every like good humanitarian thing that they could think of, they stuck in that Declaration of Independence to protect all peoples. So it was like something that never existed before.
Right. That's, if you would have asked me about this like 2 months ago, I would have still been, a little bit on the conspiracy theory side. But after listening to Parminder and Tess giving us so much warning about conspiracy theories and about, jumping on bandwagons and stuff like that, we have to be really cautious about the thoughts that we have.
And so therefore, what would be our consensus about what's on the money and all that? Just leave it alone?
Well, I would go to Tyler's presentations, and according to him, according to what Adriana just said, I don't think that they had that in mind, did they, Adriana?
No, because it was supposed to be a government for the people, by the people, of the people.
Right.
And what the Republicans are the ones that have been doing all the things to try to get it to be them be one. And it's the complete opposite of what the globalists, so-called globalists, are calling the New World Order. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but anything that seems to be linked to that, I just stay away from, because it's damaging to all of us to stay involved. And the warnings have been put out through multiple presentations when it comes to what we have to unlearn. And way back when we first started studying this message, when I first heard just the statements about 9/11, and that not about 9/11, but in that volume 9 of the testimonies, where she says that it's God that touched those buildings, and that was enough for me to just realize I need to get away from all that stuff. And I walked away then and knew that the Lord was guiding and directing, that we need to learn what we need to learn, and we need to unlearn what we shouldn't have learned. And so the whole system is turned upside down and backwards. So what Walter Veith has promoted as a New World Order and all the stuff that he points out, and the money and all that, whatever it means, I don't know, but it's not going to be productive for us in our, sorry, I'm going to pause or mute. So.
If I can just grow on that, remember how Satan tries to put different symbols in different places to get us to hate the things that are actually helping us, like the United Nations building is in the shape of the Tower of Babel, and so we look at it and think, oh, this is evil, we can't trust these people.
That's the EU, the European Union.
That's what I meant, sorry, the European Union. But really, they are actually an entity that's holding back the tides of strife and the winds and all of that. So they're actually helping. But Satan is putting symbology on them to make us hate unless we actually dig deep and figure out what's actually going on. So
Yeah.
I think that might have happened with the dollar bill symbolism as well. And the other thing is, we always thought that the Freemasons were this evil secret organization. It might be that they're actually trying to help. Just like Sister Tess went over J.P. Morgan and those people in power, they're human beings who live on this planet also. If this planet goes downhill, they aren't actually the wealthiest people in the world like everyone says. They're really not even close to anywhere near the top. If this place goes downhill, if climate goes downhill, if everything falls apart, they're human beings living on this planet. They're going down with it. There's nowhere you're going to run. So we always thought that they're definitely scheming and all of this stuff, but we don't actually have any evidence or know for sure.
Yeah.
So this is my issue that I have, and I know I have this sometimes. I don't know why. I think it has to be Satan, where you look at people and you think you know what they're thinking based off of something they say or how they act, and then you build this whole story on it. But really, none of that is true. You like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? When people talking like, oh, I bet they meant this and da da da. You can't say that. I don't think as a Christian, as a Bible student, I don't think you can act like that anymore. And I'm trying to really hard to overcome those kinds of things, because you can't do that. You can't just make things up in your head and think it's true.
I agree.
I think it causes a lot of problems with the drama, interpersonal drama.
Yeah.
And then it causes it in the bigger scale, it turns into conspiracy theories, because you think, oh, they must be conspiring and they must be thinking this and da da da. And that's just, I don't know. It's just some things I've been putting together recently as I move on along in the walk.
While that was all going on, Satan had us completely look in the wrong direction. That should be evidence to us. Everything that we have learned should show us that it was Satan that had us always trying to lead us down the wrong rabbit hole, down the wrong path, to keep us from the very things that we're learning. So now in many of the presentations, conspiracy theories are talked about often very seriously, about letting go of them. And if we hang on to them, we probably won't make it.
But that's what's good about airing out, so that we can help each other, because, right? I mean,
yeah, no, I agree with you, Sister Susan. It's good to point this out, because I think it's helpful to be able to help each other out, because if I don't know what someone has a question on, we can't help that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Angela brought the topic up, because it's good that we talk about it.
Yeah.
I think so too. Otherwise, we're afraid to talk, and then we might still be holding on to wrong ideas, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk to one another, right? We're working with each other, not against each other.
Exactly. Because we're all in unity with each other, with Christ and with each other.
Amen.
Amen. And Sister Tess talks on that we need to speak up if there's any misunderstandings or anything any disagreements. Those things need to be brought up, because it's better to, what did she say? It's better to talk about those things than to just go on with those same misunderstandings, because it only causes problems later on. So.
Yeah, and it gets worse later on too if you don't get it out now.
Yeah.
Any questions? All right, so we'll go on. Let's see. Does anybody feel like reading? Let's start here at both of those wars. Okay.
Yeah, I'll read. Both of those wars were brought about by disinformation. For the first one, that was 1991, when George Bush Sr. invaded Iraq in 1991. What did they say? They made the claim that Iraq was about to invade Saudi Arabia. I thought it was Kuwait. I think it's Kuwait, she means. There is no evidence ever being released to back that up. The other thing they said was that Iraqi soldiers were going to hospitals and taking the babies and throwing them on the floor and killing all the babies. There was a young girl, I think she was about 15, and she went up U.S. television and said she had worked in these hospitals and she had seen the Iraqi soldiers put all the babies on the floor and kill them. It was later revealed that she was the daughter of the ambassador from Kuwait to the United States. The ambassador from Kuwait trained up his daughter, and she went on American television and pretended to be a crying, damaged victim of Iraq's invasion. She made up these stories that had been fed to her about the babies. It was all built on a lie, and because of those stories being shared through the US media, George Bush was able to persuade the people that they needed to invade Iraq. He made the people afraid and angry, not to mention the U-235 that they used to poison the people there, and the WMD, weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist anymore.
I remember that girl. I remember her on the news.
I do too. Mm-hmm.
It was pretty believable.
She apparently had pretended to be several different people on several different news channels too.
Yeah,
Oh,
wow.
I didn't know that. Should I keep going, or?
So, Lisa, just to point out, so she was saying that in 1991, the invasion of Iraq was brought about by disinformation, and in 2003, the invasion of Iraq was brought about by was also disinformation, but it was about weapons of mass destruction. So yeah, Angela, if you want to continue reading, that'd be great.
Okay, the first Iraq war was brought about by disinformation. What about the second? Oh yeah, weapons of mass destruction. What is happening now? What is Iran doing? Iran just apparently hit some oil tankers and shot down a drone. And the United States is saying, look at what Iran did. And what did the EU say to the US? Now, this time you need to prove it. Good for them. We have been through and we have been here before. The US has lost some credibility. We need to be able to question. I just want us to see the connection between these two invasions. Both are built on disinformation. Both are George Bush, father and son. Both were involved, I should say, in the Iraq War, and both of them show us what the New World Order looks like. Sometimes the UN might follow in the mind, sometimes it might follow in the hand. Because like in 2003, George Bush Jr. says, you're either with me or against me. In 2003, the opposition of Russia, France, and China held no authority with him. I want us to consider how this impacts our conspiracy theories when we talk about the United Nations. It does have an occult kind of base, that's for sure. It has this concept of all the religions coming together, and some of them are quite pagan. A lot of this is paganism, but that in itself is not a bad thing. That is protection for us. Just like all these nations coming together is protection for us. This is the EU. This is the EU, and what do the populist leaders want to do with the EU? What does Steve Bannon want to do to the EU? Destroy it. Why? Because if you are a populist, right-leaning leader, the EU is a restraint on your power. They need to either destroy it or take it over and control it. They are trying to do one or the other. The EU is not a bad thing. It has kept us safe for decades.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
Oh yeah, I want to bring up something. I don't know whether this is a conspiracy theory or what, because I didn't try to trace it or anything. But I heard, I think it was way back in 2003 or 2004, somewhere around that time, that George Bush Sr. was almost killed when he went over to visit Saddam or whatever. And so George Bush Jr. determined to avenge his father. Now that sounds plausible, but I would like to, like, it just came into my mind again this evening. I thought, I wonder if there's any basis to that.
No, that was true. That happened.
That was true.
Yeah, George Bush Jr. I remember it was a documentary or something, and he was talking about how angry he was at Saddam Hussein because they tried to kill his dad.
Was that in the news?
Was it in the news?
Yeah, that he tried to kill him.
No, but I remember seeing an interview with George Bush Jr.
Uh-huh.
He was talking about it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
I'm sure it was probably in the news.
Gotcha. Okay. I've never been really that good at watching the news. I'm sorry. Okay. So now she goes on and she's going to start talking about the globalists and populism. And does anybody else want to read? I can read. So we have this concept.
Wait, I said, did you not hear me?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Because
Okay.
I thought you said, okay, sorry. Is that okay?
Yeah, it is okay. Go ahead, Adriana.
Okay. We have this concept, and I want to say it is wrong, but what we have to fear is globalists. This comes into 2016, and we are looking at Clinton, and we are worried because she is a globalist. She is this Gorbachev model. So we point to Gorbachev model. We are worried about Clinton because of globalism. Globalism is not what brings about the Sunday law. Globalism is safety. There is nothing wrong with globalism. What we needed to fear is populism. Populism is what brings about Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. Populism is what brought about Donald Trump. It is not globalism, it is populism. And populism requires the breakdown of this, Gorbachev's model, type of structure. When we talk about the globalists and George Soros and the Rothschilds, so much of that is fed from conspiracy theories. I think the richest Rothschilds currently is around the 1,400 richest person in the world right now. And yet we are still carrying on conspiracy theories that were created in the late 1800s and the early 1900s because they were Jewish and it was anti-Semitism. Our conspiracy theories are based in racism. You can bring that back to our reform line in 1979. It keeps coming back to the same type of theme. Conspiracy theories are intimately linked with racism and sexism. We do not have anything to fear from the George Soroses and the Rothschilds. It is those conspiracy theories that fed the movement that elected Donald Trump. So why are they feeding into Adventism and why are they feeding into this movement? It is because we are drunk on the wine of the apostate Protestantism. We need to cleanse that as quickly as we can. It is not globalism, it is populism, and this, Bush's model, is what populism looks like. Globalism, the operation or planning of economic and foreign policy on a global basis. Which, if I can say really quick, is actually a good thing. To become a nationalist right now and just focus on your own country and stop trade with the other countries of the world would be you're literally shooting yourself to death because of there's no way you can survive now on this planet without being economically connected with the other countries. So the natural step would have been to become a globalist. But I watched this documentary inside of the White House with Trump. He had the nationalists and the globalists, and they had meetings in the Oval Office, I don't know how many times, and he literally pitted them against each other until finally the nationalists won. And since then, he's been putting tariffs on China. He's been causing problems with putting tariffs on China, with causing problems with high prices of steel to the allies of this country. He's literally, it's crazy how he's cutting this nation off from the world. He's going towards nationalism, and it's going to destroy this country, and people don't realize.
So what other king was there that listened to his young advisors instead of the wise advisors in the Bible?
Oh, what was his name? I can't remember his name, but I know what you're talking about.
It was Solomon.
Rehoboam.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I remember.
Wow.
Yeah. Right? Trump really, he's like all over there. You know, there's so many kings that represent him now, you know, the Pharaoh and Rehoboam, and, you know, it's scary. But we can see what's going to happen based on what we saw in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you want to continue?
Sure. Globalization is the connection of different parts of the world resulting in the expansion of international cultural, economic, and political activities. It is the movement and integration of goods and people among different countries. Noun, populism, a political approach that strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. Support for populist politicians or policies, the quality of appealing or being aimed at ordinary people. So populism is the name of political movements. These movements usually make a difference between the common man or the common people and a political elite. These elites do not necessarily exist. The theme of populism is that the common man does not have certain privileges the elite have, or that he cannot do certain things the elites can do. The populists see themselves on the side of the common people. They want to help the common people get some of the rights and privileges of the elites.
Go ahead.
So when you read that Ellen White quote that the Protestants are going to bring in the Sunday law, that's why, because they're the common people and that's what they want. So he's going to do what they want. Go on, Susan.
Thank you. I was thinking about the Cambridge Analytica and why that data mining and all that was so dangerous in regards to this, because they were able to they used just a segment of the population, right? But the segment that they used was able to determine what everybody would think or do or how they would act. And they had what they called the persuadables. There are people that are like easily persuaded one way or another. They're like on a fence in their thinking. And so they were able to target those people in ways to get them to motivate those people to vote the way they wanted them to vote. And the people would think that it was their idea, right? By what they were able to do with the data that they mined, right? And data, I guess, is like the biggest commodity on earth now, bigger than gold or anything else. There's more money in data and what you and I would vote or buy or whatever. But that was what was so doggone dangerous with what they were doing to and how they're going to be able to persuade so many people to go along with this ideology that they are gearing us towards, as a even globally, how they're doing it. It's really amazes me.
Yeah.
And it all starts in the mind.
Yeah, they get control of our mind, through the technology, through our phones, through the computer, all that.
And if I can just, on that point, Alexander Nix, I think, referred to his procedures with the implementation of different ads to garner different reactions out of people, a methodology.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Alexander Kogan, the guy who did the sample data mining out of like 100,000 people, he was able to establish a pattern.
Yeah.
In people's choices. So they find patterns too in their methodology. It's just so crazy how this counterfeit always is working.
Yeah.
And can I say something too to add to that? In the news recently, well, this has already been something that has been followed through, but like recently, a lot more news reports are coming out with people listening into different gadgets. So it's not just the phone, it's going on to like Surrey. Like there was a news report on Surrey, and they stated that Apple contractors are listening into Siri recordings. So one of the persons on there that they interviewed briefly to kind of explain what their purpose is for listening in or creating this whole like program, he said that when computers can understand, human contractors take over and can wind up hearing confidential medical info, drug dealings, and even like people having intimacy. They can hear these things, and the models that's behind it is a business model, which is not to use humans to listen to you, but to use computers to learn as much about your habits as possible. Surveillance systems are built to try to predict what you like and what you'll do next, so they can sell you things, which is really interesting. So he was saying that in addition to people having the ability to listen in to what you're doing, that you don't think that they are listening into or are aware of, that the whole purpose of them using these computers is basically to learn your mind, to predict how you will think, and so they can sell you different things. But I think it's all, never mind, because that might be going on a different thing. But, you know, just trying to understand people's minds and what they'll do, you know, I found that interesting.
Yeah.
That reminds me of just before the Second World War, when IBM used their punch cards and all the technology that they had, so that they could define and put the folks into different categories: Jewish, partly Jewish, whatever they were involved in, you know, their trade, and that's how, you know, they got hauled off to concentration camps. So
Wow, I didn't know that was IBM. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, there's a huge book on it that I read about two weeks ago, and it was just fascinating. And I thought, okay, and when I first started to work, there was this big IBM mainframe and all these punch cards, and I was fascinated by this stuff, you know. Well, it has a very dark past.
Wow, interesting. Thank you.
Something else that's pretty interesting, and I don't know how new it is, but it's the Face app. And so you can you could show them your face, and then it'll give you an older version of yourself. But when you do that, your face, if they have all the rights to your face, not to mention they have all your data on that also. And they have the terms. If you don't read the terms, you don't realize how much you're giving up, because you're giving all your information up.
I did that a few years ago.
Yeah, I saw Andrew do it the other day, but then people were writing about it, and then so I was looking it up, and you gave up everything.
What if, on that note, Tony, what if, like, okay, my daughter does all those apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she will take a picture of me on her phone, and when she does it on an app, does that mean automatically, even though I wasn't the one who signed for the app, that anyone she takes a picture of that she uses that app on will be?
Well, this Face app it's more or less like an individual will, you know, they'll show your face, but it will show you what you look like 30 or 40 years later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I heard that. I saw that on the news.
Right. So of course, if your picture is taken and it's on social media, but as far as the individual doing the Face app, because they did not read the terms and just did it because it's fun, they just lost all of their information and privacy.
Wow.
And they have no rights to get it back, because that's what's written in there.
And Susan, I don't know how it can be linked to one who didn't do it themselves. It's probably something that's linked to her Facebook page. So
Right.
her picture might be a part of it, but I don't know how it would connect to you otherwise. You know?
Yeah.
Your picture would only get on there, but you didn't give up. It's different.
It's the terms of service. It's like the contract that you click OK to when you download the app. Mm. What it's saying is that you're basically opening up all of the information that is on your phone or on your computer to that app. So it's got nothing to do with you if you get your picture taken by someone who has the app, but it's whoever signs up for it.
Okay,
yeah.
wow.
You see all those things that people do on Facebook, their little games and stuff that they do. Every one of those is part of
Well, I remember before I used to like take those quiz, how much can you learn out of the Bible? How much can you get right? Or,
One of those is,
and then it clicked on me a few years ago. Well, this is just, I don't know, it just clicked on me. This is information there. It's for a reason they're doing this. So
yeah, they're collecting information on it.
Exactly. So I haven't done it in a long time. Years.
And that's why God's keeping us busy studying, so we don't have time to play with games.
I never had time for that stuff anyways. I was never a game person, so I just got in and did what I had to do and leave. But yeah, I see so many people participate in so many different things, and then some of them still sending them on Messenger and just not realizing what they've opened themselves up to.
I won't even open Messenger, even if I know you.
I don't either.
Open it up.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have time to play games on Facebook anyway.
No, not at all.
Studying. So does anybody else have any more comments or questions?
No, but I was this your definitions and stuff like that. That's what I was gonna put on mine too, because those are the same things. Not the Rothschild one, but because she had up on the board globalism, letter or whatever. So I was doing the definitions.
Yeah.
I have to look into everything that I'm reading, because when I'm editing, the names don't sound right. So I have to. I'm learning a lot, because I have to go into the Russian lawyer, or I have to go back into the history of Putin and things like that. And so I'm learning a lot. It's just
good.
Yeah.
It takes time. Yeah.
It does, because every name, or like even the names, you don't know the names, so you got to Google the names, and then once you Google, then you can read about it. So
right, get the spelling right and everything.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, earlier in the presentation, she mentioned the Rothschilds and George Soros, and we talked about them another night. So I just wanted to throw out a definition of who they were. And so it says that that the Rothschilds were they are a prominent family originating from Germany. They established banking and finance houses in Europe beginning in the 18th century. They were pioneers in providing capital for business and financing infrastructure projects such as railways and the Suez Canal. The Rothschilds molded the way the international world of high finance works today. But as you can see, they were back in the 18th century, and as Sister Tess noted, that they're like one of the richest Rothschilds in the world right now is only the 1,400th richest person. So they've dropped down a ways in being rich, and so people who still talk about the Rothschilds and the George Soros and stuff like that as being conspiracy theorists, as being, like high up there trying to take over the world, they're not really reading their history. They're following the Rothschilds, and they're not up there anymore. And George Soros, he was born August 12, 1930 in Budapest, Hungary. He was a Hungarian-born American financier, author, philanthropist, and activist whose success as an inventor made him one of the wealthiest men in the world. He was also known as a powerful and influential supporter of liberal social causes. And I don't know why I didn't add this, but I thought that he was also a Jew. Am I wrong? Because they were they were using the Rothschilds and George Soros in these conspiracy theories because these people were being anti-Semitic, and that would be against.
I think you had that written in there, but because I thought I read that in here.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
So okay, so yeah, so it was in there. She must have said it already.
The I think. Aren't the Rothschilds Jewish? Because that means red shield, and I read that somewhere that they were they were from Germany, but they were Jewish. Mm-hmm. And aren't they the bankers for the Vatican? I read that too. Is that for real, or is that a conspiracy theory? Anyone know?
For real, but now I think I'll look into it more.
I know.
Angela's on it. Okay, so
I just still don't understand why they're such a big, besides their wealth or anything, why Seventh-day Adventists would be so focused on that family, or why that they would be something big for people to look into. I just don't get it.
Because those were conspiracies.
Right. And so they keep going along with those conspiracy theories without checking back in the history and figuring out what it all means. And back when this conspiracy theory was big, back in the 18th century,
okay.
They were Jewish, right? And so people were against them because they were the people that were anti-Semitic or against the Jews. And so they came up with these theories against them. But the people of today aren't looking back to see where did these come from. It's like, the slang and the, euphemisms or whatever that we use. We don't go back and look at where this came from. Okay, so like, for instance, the rule of thumb. Does anybody know where that came from, the rule of thumb?
I know it was something, you can't hit your wife with something thicker than your thumb.
Exactly, but yet everybody says the rule of thumb all the time, and it's very against. It's very
misogynistic.
Yes, sexist, and yet we say it all the time, and we don't
know what it means.
We don't even blink, right? Because we don't know what it means, and that's why the Seventh-day Adventists still go through these conspiracy theories, because they don't know what it means. They didn't read their history.
But the more that I'm studying
sometimes
this,
we
I
use
know that
words
I'm
and we mean something different by the way that we use a word. We don't always know the original meaning of a word, so meanings of words do change as well as the use of phrases.
Correct. That's true. And the rule of thumb today means something different than it originated in, but we still use it because we don't know any better. I mean, once you know what it means, are you going to keep using it? You know what I'm saying?
Sure, because it doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Yeah, because it used to mean I wouldn't use it. I won't use it anymore now that I know what it means.
But what does
I've never used that phrase.
The rule of thumb, to me, means that's like a colloquial saying phrase that's just the rule, a general rule that we go by, say, in the plumbing trade. Rule of thumb is 2 inches equals 5 centimeters or something. It's basically a phrase as a quick reference to a standard that's become accepted generally.
It's got a new meaning now, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Along the way. Right.
There's a lot of phrases in our English language, especially that, if we didn't want to use the phrases, we wouldn't use half the English language because of the original meaning from the 1800s or 1600s.
Why do we take that definition of where rule of thumb comes from anyways? Because there's multiple explanations as to where it comes from. Ones that maybe date older than that. Like I don't know.
I didn't know that.
Well, there's one rule of thumb derives from, it says from miller's thumb, and millers in medieval times judged the fineness of flour by rubbing it between finger and thumb to decide whether to regrind it or not. So
you just opened up a whole new thing, John.
Yeah.
I mean,
we should probably let Christine get back to the study.
Yeah. Right.
Good point. That's to me, that's the danger of going into these things is it takes our minds to the wrong places. So it's just my thoughts here.
But it's kind of like also with the definitions that Sister Tess sometimes comes up with. We don't know where she always gets those, but she comes up with definitions that fit. And so it's kind of like that. We kind of have to explore some of these things to figure out, why do we think the way we do? Why do we say the things we say? I mean, if we hadn't brought up the Rothschilds and the George Soros, would we continue to believe the same thing about the Rothschilds and the George Soros? So we do have to investigate them.
I agree.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I think it's good that we're doing this because I think it's going to be helpful to all of us. And it's good to hear what other people think, kind of, so we can come into unity,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll go on. So to understand the seventh head, when we see this overturning and the nation made up of every tribe in this structure of the United States as a dictator, it doesn't sound right. To understand the seventh head, when we see this overturning and the nation made up of every tribe, it is this structure of the United States as a dictatorship. Like George Bush said, there is no alternative to American supremacy.
Maybe this should have been the.
It should have been what?
Maybe this should have been the.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of what we were talking about was the external. And so now she's going to move on to the internal. And it's pretty short. So just to consider the internal. So if this is the sixth kingdom of, so the United States, this is the sixth kingdom, and I've given you the answers already, is the United States, and this here is the seventh kingdom, which is the United States. What is the internal? And everybody knows this answer already, right? Everybody? So it's Adventism or SDA. So we, what are we after Sunday law? This here also is Adventism. This is Adventism, and this is Adventism, because we compare, we've all done the study on, we've been reading Acts 27 and going through those videos, and we all know that the ship represents the United States and SDA, and so it represents the United States and SDA as the sixth kingdom. And if the seventh kingdom is represented by the US, then also the seventh kingdom for the internal will be represented as SDA. And so, but what is coming up is a new type of leadership, and who is coming up between Panium and Sunday Law. She said, I want us to go back. This will be in our second line, so we will probably address this more. So I'm pretty sure she'll be addressing this more in one of her other videos. But she says, she goes on, she reads from My Life Today, which is ML 334.1. She says that she's skipping 334.4, and I just wrote that down, but the parts that are in italic are actually the quotes from My Life Today. She says, this is speaking of Paul in the second ship of Alexandria. But if we were to put it on the same reform line, it is between Panium and Sunday Law in the same history on the line of the second ship. And Ellen White quotes, or is quoted here, the same hope and cheerfulness is seen when he is upon the deck of the ship, the tempest beating about him, the ship going to pieces. And Tess says, the same hope and cheerfulness is seen. The tempest beats around him, the ship is falling to pieces, the ship is Adventism. Ellen White is quoted here, so he gives orders to the commander of the ship and preserves the lives of all on board. Although a prisoner, he is really the master of the ship. And Tess says, what is that saying? You have this ship representing Adventism all the way through. It is Adventism before based on the United States. We can also see Adventism after, but who is the boss? There is a change in leadership, and what begins to rise up in this history between Panium and Sunday Law is Adventism under a new leadership. It is this movement. We are still Seventh-day Adventist. Seventh-day Adventism is itself does not end. The institutions come to their end. The institutions of the United States falls here. The institutions of Adventism end here. But the United States itself is still a powerful entity, and Adventism is still a power. But you start to see a change. The change in the leadership becomes visible. Paul becomes visible in this history as a leadership of the church. When we go to Adventist, because we are bringing in Levites in this history, what are we saying to them? We are still Seventh-day Adventist. We accept Ellen White, all of that. Seventh-day Adventism itself is not ended. It is your leadership. You need to stop following the conference structure. You need to follow this movement because they have rejected the prophetic messages. We are repeating the history of Christ. We have gone through the line of the ship of Adramyttium. They chose to abide in death, and it results in their overthrow by Sunday law. But you can particularly mark it between these two waymarks, meaning Pentium and Sunday law. And then we went to see that this is already illustrated, like so much else, at the very beginning of our reform line from 1989 to 1991. We wanted to consider the phrase a new world order and what that looks like. And we wanted to suggest that there are two different models. The fear of one is based on conspiracy theories, but it is this one, Bush's model, that we need to dread, both when it comes to the state control and from the church. And then she had I typed up the closing prayer, but here is her final board work, and I pretty much captured everything except for the words of Venezuela and Syria, which she talked about in there. But so anyway, and that's the final board. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. Does anybody have more to add on the New World Order?
I have something that goes along the lines of what we were talking about earlier about talking about these things out loud with each other so we can work them out. Please. And it's something I think every one of us has been seeing. God is trying to strengthen every single one of our minds so that we can stand individually and research and be able to grapple with these things and see the truth.
I agree.
Because do you realize we didn't realize how we were looking at things? We were looking at them wrong. We need to be able to look at them, to investigate. We can't just hide information from ourselves and go on ignorantly. This is clearly not how, keeping ourselves out of the news completely, we miss all these external waymarks. So we have to look at certain things, but we have to be able to be smart enough to discern and and that's a work of prayer. The majority of it.
Sister Tess
talking to each other about it and helping each other out is also very useful.
She says we need. She says she hopes that we realize that we need to be watching the news to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And we do need to come together. But we need to do it, like you said, prayerfully. Because we need to do it in the right spirit, in the right mind, that we all come into unity and not force our opinions on each other, but we're sharing, we're learning from each other. And
Amen.
Yeah. So I think tonight was a really good class that we were able to bring up a topic that was a hard topic, but we learned from it, and I hope that we're all just learning of how we've looked at things before and how we should be looking at things now.
I just had an idea, and I can't believe how clear that. Do you realize Satan put that little pyramid and that eyeball on there to detract from the in God we trust? The in God we trust is the important part, and we looked at that as the good part of the dollar bill, and we looked at that little New World Order thing as, oh, look at that, that's horrible, we need to get that off of there. It was the in God we trust that was the problem. He totally, even on that symbol there on the dollar bill, he totally, wow.
Isn't that amazing? And I find it amazing, okay, that because like Angela brought up the topic of the money, right? And God had me just look at that. I wasn't looking at more than 2 hours ago, and you saw that I had it bookmarked. I mean, I don't know if you saw that, but I was looking at that page earlier, reading that topic, and I still had that open. And so I think God knew it was going to be a topic, and that we needed to all come together and have more information. So
we learned something out of it too.
Yeah.
Amen.
I knew we were going to have extra time today, and I knew God would provide. I knew He would provide extra information to share and to bring us all into unity. He's so good. Praise
Amen.
God.
Thank you, Christine.
What we need is discernment on these things, because these things have turned our ability to understand upside down. I mean, that's why it's so important to have discernment when it comes to all of this, because it really
It's so
is backwards.
Yeah, it's interesting because. Oh.
Go ahead, Victoria.
Oh no. Who is speaking? Trying to speak? Sorry, just go ahead. Sorry.
I'll say it and then you can talk. Okay, so I'm just saying that Jonathan said Proverbs 15:3, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. So Sister Victoria, go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, it was just something, a side note. I just remember always being encouraged to watch the news. And I know the Lord, when I was in middle school, and keeping up with those things. And then my dad would kind of confirm that you need to watch, some of the news and, kind of know, because he wasn't heavily involved, but he knew about all this stuff, and not saying that he wasn't aware of the conspiracies, because he was knowledgeable about those things too, and all of that. But I didn't think it was that important, because Sister White tells us not to vote and all these different things. So I wasn't a political person, even though I kind of knew a little bit, but I wasn't either for or against looking at the news. I just was so busy. I didn't really have time, but I always tried to keep up. But I will say that I didn't think it was as important as it is now, to kind of follow along. But my dad did impress us, or encourage us, watch the news. You need to know these things so you know what's going on in the world. You need to be well-rounded. You can't just, know about the Bible and all these things. You have to know about, everything, So it's really interesting how this kind of coming full circle, and stuff like that. It's interesting.
I just wanted to point out that in regards to what's on the money, I don't think we got into her study yet, but some of you have probably watched it, where she talks about the influence that she talks about how the money was changed in regards to In God We Trust.
Yeah.
So I think that the pyramid with the all-seeing eye is actually a Christian reference, whereas we've always taken the conspiracy theory idea from it, thinking that it means the Eye of Ra, which was the Egyptian god. But Egypt had no influence on American money. It was the Christian influence, I think, that put it there. And it does have a Christian. That's why I posted that Proverbs verse. And there's others. It's because the people who were making the money were trying to make the nation Christian again. This is all about the same topic that we're talking about. But I think Tess gets into it in one of the later studies.
Okay, that's good then. I can't wait to see that. I thought I did see it. I thought it started in like the early 1900s, where they were trying to put or was that the Pledge of Allegiance?
There was a mixture of different things that were going on in the Millerite period, the 1844 period and the 1888 period, in regards to the external, what was going on in the U.S. And the money was one of those things, and it does come up in one of the later studies. Just to kind of
Civil War time, I thought I heard that it was around the Civil War time when they were wanting to make some of those changes and put In God We Trust on the.
Yeah.
So Francisco said that he just read that they just made a law about In God We Trust. Francisco, can you tell us about that?
Well, the Trump supporting states called the red state. They call them the red states because they brought in the Trump, and now they've passed the law to put In God We Trust back into the school systems, but there's just not a law. They're actually painting it on the walls, on the hall walls, and in each classroom. Mm-hmm. They're putting the words In God We Trust. And I guess they're up to like 6 or 7 states that have adopted the same legislation, but there's other states taking a look at it at this time.
And that's all in 2019?
Yeah, in 2019.
Just in the last few months, or what?
Wow.
That I didn't read the whole article because it was a really long article, but just the the initial look of it,
and it's it's a law.
Right, a state law.
A state law.
It's a state law. It goes from state to state. Like I forget which states have it, but most of them are like around the Bible Belt, and then there's other ones.
Yeah, I would think like California and liberal states and atheists would want to fight that, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Thank you for sharing that.
It just seems like a huge slap in the face for anybody who doesn't believe in God. I mean, of course I do, and but to push that on somebody, it's against the Constitution, right?
Yeah, and it's in the classroom, so it's educating the mind. So that's how they want to get it back in anyway, bringing the Bible reading back in, the prayer, all that, right?
By teaching the youngest generation. How do you get control over people? By getting control of the mind of the younger generation.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying, Susan, I think it was last week, where one of the kids would have to leave the class because he didn't celebrate birthdays or anything like that.
One of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, his parents didn't approve of him being involved in those activities when we would have them in the classroom. And I understand it now, but as a child looking on, it just looked like he was being mistreated. How unfair, right?
Right.
But yeah.
I can't remember now. I don't remember if it's Tessa's videos or Tyler's videos that talks about the money. Now that I think about it, or maybe both.
I think it's Tyler's. I think it was Tyler's because somebody brought up in God We Trust. I think somebody brought up something about on the dollar or the coin or something that. What do you think about this? And then he goes into a little bit of it.
Well, he talks a lot about it actually at one point.
Yeah.
Like one of the focuses of one of his studies, but the studies on YouTube don't have any other name for Tyler other than the Constitution, so I'm not sure which one it is in at all.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him that I saw do that a lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought there was one of Sister Tess that I listened that she was talking about that just a little bit.
It is titled "In God We Trust."
They did overlap their studies. There was quite a lot of overlap, so I'm sure it'll probably come up.
Right. The one's in Canada, right?
If I remember right, hers was the one where she was taking it back to the business leaders in the early 1900s that were losing strength as Protestants, and so they were trying to push that on the dollar bill, if I remember right, or they were trying to add something somewhere. I don't remember which one it was exactly, but I thought she was talking about the early 1900s.
Yeah, it was Green New Deal by, I think, Roosevelt, and it was one of the. It's actually one of the presentations that I'm scheduled to present. So yeah.
Oh, she does talk about it. Okay, that's okay, cool.
So we'll just wait for it.
You guys have good memory, huh?
It didn't used to be like this. These lines change your brain somehow. I don't know how, but things have changed a lot. That's all I know.
Awesome. So does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. I have just a comment. Did anybody hear that? I was watching the news and there was a clip where they said that Trump invited Putin to the White House sometime in the fall.
Yeah.
Oh.
But they didn't give a date. I saw it on NBC Nightly News, and they showed the clip twice. It was the same clip because it was first premiered on Sunday, and because not a lot of people is like watching the news, I don't know, but you know, they kind of replay it on Monday, kind of so people can be aware. But they didn't follow up on that. But they didn't give a date, but they do know that Trump invited Putin to the White House to come sometime in the fall, which I thought was very interesting.
You think it's going to be November 9th on a Saturday?
I don't know.
That's what all of us are thinking, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that the intelligence officer was doing an interview with last week, and the lady that was doing the interview told him that Putin was coming in the fall, and he didn't even know about it. And he's the intelligence officer, and the week after that he resigned. He's stepping.
What? Wow.
And Trump's bringing in one of his boys that has no experience to head up the intelligence office, which is
that new guy who's crazy.
Guy.
Yeah, I saw him.
Ratcliffe or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. That guy. Okay. Yeah, and the new guy will be the one who was like defending him.
Right.
He was defending him recently. Yeah, and they put him. Oh, but I didn't know. Yeah, because that was the interview where she told him that that Trump invited. Yeah, and he was like, "What? Yeah. Okay. Yeah." So.
Intelligence officer was the director. His name is Coates.
Yeah, he's the one that's leaving.
Right,
yeah.
He's the one that.
Because he criticized Trump on some things that he did. He didn't agree with him, and anyone who doesn't agree with Trump disappears. Just like Stalin.
I know.
Also. And
that's so true.
Or Hitler, or whoever. Yeah, it's the same dictatorial thing. They all do the same thing. If you disagree with him, you're gone.
Yeah.
Well, he said that if it didn't come into the Oval Office before Trump on one page, he didn't want to deal with it. So he's intelligent, so he has to bring a whole bunch of pictures and graphs and everything, and Trump would not even look at him. He was just like, can't you just make one page and surmise it? And that was one of the problems he had with Trump, because it's more complex than that. And well.
Wow. Okay. Oh, does it? Anybody want to pray? Okay.
We thank you, Holy Father, for your presence today, Lord. Thank you for allowing us to gather under your name. And we thank you for your Holy Spirit you put in our group here. And we ask you to continue to help us to move forward. And we ask that you impart more of your Holy Spirit in us, Lord, that we may understand and be able to teach these this belief that we have. We thank you for this day and the opportunity to serve you, Lord. And we want to do everything for your power and your glory. And we pray in your holy and mighty name, in the name of Yeshua, through the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody.